The road stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the dense pine forest under the fading orange glow of dusk. Inside the car, the hum of the engine and the soft crackle of the radio filled the space with a sense of quiet comfort. The Johnson family, Mark behind the wheel, his wife Sarah in the passenger seat, and their two kids, Emily and Jake, asleep in the back, were finally heading home after a weekend getaway to the mountains. Mark adjusted his grip on the steering wheel, his eyes flicking to the GPS screen mounted on the dashboard. "Straight shot for 20 miles, no turns," he murmured, more to himself than to Sarah. She nodded absently, scrolling through the photos she'd taken earlier that day, sunlit hikes, the kids laughing by a creek, the kind of memories they'd look back on for years. On impulse, she turned in her seat and snapped a quick picture of Emily and Jake curled up under their blankets in the back seat, their faces peaceful in sleep. The flash illuminated the car for just a second, casting strange shadows before fading. Something about the way the light hit the trees outside made her pause, a flicker of movement in the rearview mirror. But when she glanced back, there was nothing. Just the empty road behind them, swallowed by the gathering dark. Then, a strange glitch. The digital clock on the dashboard blinked, 9:17 p.m., then abruptly jumped back to 9:02 before correcting itself. Mark frowned. "Did you see that?" he asked, tapping the display. Sarah shook her head, but a prickle of unease ran down her spine. The kids stirred slightly in the back, Jake mumbling something in his sleep before settling again. The radio, tuned to a classic rock station, suddenly hissed with static. Mark reached to adjust it, but before he could, the static cleared just enough for a voice, too distorted to make out, to whisper a single word before cutting back to music. Sarah laughed nervously. "Probably just bad reception out here." Mark forced a chuckle, but his hands tightened on the wheel. Neither of them noticed the shadowy figure standing just beyond the tree line, watching as the car disappeared around the next bend. The highway stretched on, silent and empty, the trees pressing in like sentinels on either side. The Johnson family's car hummed steadily forward, its headlights cutting through the deepening twilight. Inside, the air was warm. The only sounds the soft breathing of the children in the back seat and the quiet murmur of the radio. Then, without warning, the car's engine sputtered. Mark's foot instinctively pressed harder on the gas, but the pedal went slack under his shoe. The dashboard lights flickered, dimmed, then surged back to life. A cold dread settled in his stomach. What the hell? Before he could finish, the headlights cut out completely, plunging them into darkness. The car didn't jerk or stall. It simply stopped, rolling forward as if the engine had never existed. No sound, no resistance, just silence. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to the dashboard as if she could will the electronics back to life. "Mark, what's happening?" He didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the rearview mirror, because for the briefest moment, just as the car's interior lights died, he saw the back seat. Empty. No Emily, no Jake. Just rumpled blankets where his children had been sleeping seconds before. Then the mirror went black. Behind them, trucker Dale Riggs slammed his brakes, his rig shuddering to a stop. He'd been trailing the family's sedan for miles, watching its taillights glow steady in the night, until, without reason, the car's lights vanished mid-drive, not like they'd turned off, like they'd been erased. Now the sedan sat motionless in the road, dark and silent. Dale radioed dispatch, his voice tight. "Yeah, I got a vehicle dead on Route 47. No lights, no movement. I'm gonna check it out." He approached cautiously, his flashlight cutting a shaky beam through the driver's window. The car was pristine, no broken glass, no dents, just Abandoned. The door was unlocked. Inside, the keys still dangled from the ignition. A half-drunk coffee sat in the cup holder. On the back seat, Emily's stuffed rabbit lay on its side, one threadbare ear bent under Jake's discarded jacket. Dale's breath fogged the air as he leaned in, his light sweeping over the seats. No family, no sign of struggle, just the faint, lingering scent of Sarah's perfume. And the car's radio, now dead, suddenly crackled to life for a single distorted syllable before cutting out again. Somewhere in the trees, a twig snapped. Dale didn't wait to hear what else might be out there. The flashing red and blue lights of patrol cars painted the forest in surreal strokes as officers moved through the scene with methodical precision. Sheriff Ellis crouched beside the abandoned sedan, his breath visible in the cold night air, running a gloved hand along the driver's side door frame. Nothing. No fingerprints, no scratches, no signs of forced entry, just smooth, unblemished metal. The car stood exactly where the trucker had found it, perfectly parked along the shoulder as if someone had gently guided it there. Yet according to Dale Riggs's statement, it had coasted to a stop dead center in the lane. When the tow team arrived an hour later, they'd found it shifted 20 feet to the side without a single person touching it. Deputy Wilkins shone his flashlight across the back seat, the beam catching on something nearly invisible to the naked eye. "Sheriff, you need to see this." Tiny footprints, child-sized, pressed into the leather seats, but they didn't lead anywhere. They simply stopped halfway across, the impressions growing fainter until the leather showed no disturbance at all, as if the children had been lifted straight up from where they sat. Forensic technician Lisa Nguyen adjusted her camera, snapping photos of the dashboard. "Clock stuck at 9:17, she noted. Same time as when the trucker reported seeing them. She paused, tilting her head. "Wait, that can't be right." Her gloved finger hovered over the odometer. According to this, the car's only been running for 3 minutes total. Inside the vehicle, the air carried a strange metallic tang that none of the investigators could identify. It clung to the upholstery, the steering wheel, the children's abandoned belongings. When analyzed later, lab technicians would find the substance contained trace elements not found anywhere in nature, and certainly not in any modern vehicle. The most disturbing discovery came when they reviewed Sarah Johnson's final photograph. Enhanced imaging revealed not just the sleeping children in the back seat, but a pale, elongated face pressed against the window behind them, its features stretched and distorted like something viewed through water. The timestamp on the photo showed it was taken at 9:16 p.m., 1 minute before the disappearance. As dawn's first light crept over the scene, Sheriff Ellis stood staring at the empty road, the hairs on his neck standing upright. The forensics team had found one last anomaly. The car's radio, though completely dead, had recorded 5 seconds of audio during the incident. When he played it back in his office later that day, he'd hear the sound of a child's laughter abruptly cut off by a wet, tearing noise, followed by 3 seconds of something breathing heavily on the other end. Then silence. The kind of silence that lingers in empty spaces where people should be. The fluorescent lights of the sheriff's department buzzed overhead as investigators crowded around the caseboard, photographs and reports pinned haphazardly across its surface. The disappearance of the Johnson family had drawn attention from beyond their small county. State police, FBI consultants, even a retired astrophysicist who had caught wind of the strange details. Sheriff Ellis rubbed his tired eyes and leaned against the edge of the table. "All right," he said, voice rough from too much coffee and too little sleep. "Let's hear it. What the hell happened out there?" Agent Vasquez, a no-nonsense investigator with a reputation for cracking cold cases, tapped a finger against the crime scene photos. This was planned. Someone was watching them, maybe even following them for miles. The car's electronics were tampered with, something to cut the engine and lights remotely. They took the family quickly, quietly, and left the scene staged to look like something else. She flipped to an enlarged image of the roadside. No drag marks, no signs of struggle. They were incapacitated fast. Gas or some other sedative pumped into the vents. As for the kids' footprints just stopping, she exhaled sharply. They were carried out. Professional work. But then the forensic tech, Lisa Nguyen, crossed her arms. Then where's the trace evidence? No foreign fingerprints, no fibers, no signs of forced entry. And that substance we found inside, nothing in any toxicology database matches it. The local historian, the Thin Place, Theory Old Man Pearson, the town's unofficial historian, cleared his throat from the corner of the room. He'd been quiet until now, his gnarled hands clutching a leather-bound journal. Route 47's always been different, he said slowly. Back in '58, a milk truck vanished same stretch of road. Driver turned up 6 months later in a field 30 miles away, swore he'd only been gone an hour. He flipped open the journal to a yellowed newspaper clipping. And in 1923, 2 kids playing near those woods said they saw a shiny door in the air before one of them disappeared for 3 days. Came back with no memory, but his clothes were rotted, like he'd been gone years. Pearson's voice dropped. Some places the walls between here and there are just thin. Silence settled over the room. The astrophysicist, the anomaly theory. Dr. Lyle Carter, the scientist who had driven in from the university, adjusted his glasses. What if it wasn't people? And it wasn't ghosts? He pulled up a satellite weather scan from that night. See this? A localized electromagnetic spike right over that stretch of road at 9:17 p.m. And the lab results from the car's interior? Trace elements that don't exist in our atmosphere. He zoomed in on the image. I think the Johnsons drove through something. A temporary rift. A dimensional fold. Call it what you want, but for those few seconds, they weren't here anymore. Ellis stared at the board, at the smiling family photos pinned beside images of their empty car. None of the theories fit perfectly. None explained the face in the window, the whispers on the radio, the shoe that appeared in the trunk a year later. He thought of the one detail he hadn't shared, the call he'd gotten last night from a farmer near the site. Sheriff, the man had whispered, my dogs won't stop barking at the tree line. And sometimes I think I hear a kid laughing out there. Ellis turned off the lights as he left the room. The caseboard glowed faintly in the dark, the word Unsolved stamped across the file in bold red letters. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the station's windows. Somewhere down Route 47, a set of headlights flickered once, then went dark. A year had passed since the Johnson family vanished, and the case had gone colder than the winter wind howling through the police impound lot. The sedan, now just another abandoned vehicle collecting dust, sat beneath a tarp in the far corner, its secrets locked away like the memories of that night. Rookie officer Danny Hartman pulled the night shift, the kind of quiet, uneventful duty reserved for newbies. He sipped stale coffee, flipping through old case files to pass the time. The Johnson disappearance always nagged at him. Too many loose ends, too many questions that no one could answer. At exactly 3:17 a.m., a sound cut through the silence. A soft thump. Then another. Danny froze, his coffee halfway to his lips. The noise wasn't coming from the station. It was coming from outside, from the impound lot. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped into the biting cold, his breath fogging the air. The lot was empty, the only movement the sway of the tarp covering the Johnsons' car. Then he heard it again. Thump. From the trunk. Danny's pulse hammered in his throat as he approached, his hand hovering over his service weapon. He told himself it was probably just a raccoon or some animal that had gotten trapped inside. But deep down, he knew. Animals didn't knock. With a deep breath, he yanked the tarp off and shone his light at the trunk. The lock had rusted shut over the year, but as he watched, it clicked, unlatching on its own. The trunk lid creaked open an inch. A smell hit him first. Damp earth and something metallic, like old blood. Then, as he forced himself to peer inside, his flashlight beam landed on a single object. A child's shoe. Jake Johnson's sneaker, caked in mud, the laces still tied in the same double knots his mother had taught him. Danny's hands shook as he lifted it. The sole was nearly worn through, the fabric frayed, as if the boy had been walking in it for years. And then, from somewhere in the darkness beyond the lot, a child's voice whispered, "Help me." Danny spun, his flashlight cutting through the night. The lot was empty. The wind howled. But when he looked back at the trunk, the shoe was gone. And the car's radio, dead for a year, suddenly crackled to life, playing a faint looping recording of a woman's voice, choked with tears. "Don't follow the lights." Then silence. The next morning, Sheriff Ellis found the sedan's trunk wide open, Danny's flashlight abandoned on the ground beside it. Of the rookie officer, there was no trace, except for one thing, his duty belt neatly placed on the driver's seat, the radio still whispering static, and on the windshield a single word, finger written in dust. Gone. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.